But first, grab that paintbrush. Here's Frank Clarke in Simply Painting.
Welcome everyone to Simply Painting. I'm Frank Clarke, and we did mention a garden. I'm in Mount Stewart Gardens, and that's in County Down in Ireland. Now this beautiful old home and gardens has been taken over by the National Trust, and that means that you and I and everyone else can come along and enjoy them and pick some subjects to paint. Now let me tell you a little bit about this wonderful place. First of all, there are about 6 or 7 different garden areas. They've all got different names. Like there's the sunken garden, the Italian garden, the Spanish garden, and so on. Enough about that, let's go on a bit further. Around me where I'm standing, you'll notice there are many stone statues. Now I'll tell you what they are. The owner of this beautiful home, what she did about 50 or 60 years ago in England, she had many friends and she represented them as stone animals. We have dinosaurs, we have griffins, we have dodo birds. I'm not going to tell you who was what, I don't know. But that's how she nicknamed her friends. Not interesting. I don't know if I'd like to be a friend of hers in those days. What would she represent me as? However, as I've said, we're going to pick something to paint. And I thought, what about flowers? The place is a mass of them. So we're going to select one of the flowers that we've seen and go back to the studio and we'll paint it together. So let's do just that. There you are. I'm just drawing and sketching some flowers because that's what we're going to do in this lesson. We're going to paint some flowers. But before we get to that, once again, we have to talk about the materials we're going to need. So very quickly, first of all, watercolours. We need 5 of the 8, and the 5 are alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, lemon yellow, raw sienna, and burnt umber. And the 3 we don't need are ultramarine, Payne's grey, and light red. We leave those to one side. Next, of course, we have our brushes. And we have the large Simply Painting watercolour brush, which is 2 inches, and it's made from goat hair. And secondly, we have the small one. And the small brush is made from nylon, and it is a number 3 rigger. So that's for the detailed work, not too much. Remember, big ones most of the time. Next we come to the palette tray, where we lay our paints out on. And it's a large white tray. Now, if you have a plate or if something like that, once it's white, it doesn't matter. No little small ones, great big one. Right? We have a jar full of water. Make sure there's water in it. We have some cloths to clean your brush and to keep it dry or to wet it or whatever you want to do with it. And last, but by no means least, we have the watercolour paper. And it measures 10 by 14. 10 by 14. It's in portrait. It's upright this time. Usually with flowers, it's a good idea to paint in portrait. Now, we're using a slightly larger sheet, as we always do, to give us a little bit of room, but you'd normally use a pad. Now, we have one other item, and that, of course, is our masking fluid, because with flowers, a good idea is to draw the flowers in, paint them with masking fluid, then you can paint away your background and come back later and rub them out, and you've got nice white flowers left. That's clever. It's used a lot with flower painters. Well, that's that, so why don't we now look at the picture that we did. And this was, if you remember, Mount Stewart Gardens. Lovely place, wasn't it? Well, we picked some daisies. I thought they'd be simple to do. I thought that lady was very funny, wasn't it? All her friends were made out of stone. I don't know if I like that too much. I'm still trying to wonder what she would have picked as an effigy of me, but however, there we are. First we draw the horizon line. So again, it's horizon, sky, middle and foreground. Have some more fun, exactly the same as we always do. And very faintly, across there, it's about 5 inches up on the page, from the bottom up, that's all. Now, oh, I should keep the pencil in my hand because the next thing I'm going to do is have a look back once more to the flowers and the picture. We're going to see where did we place those daisies. And wherever they are, we're going to put a dot on the paper. So watch me now. The first daisy is about there. That represents the center of the daisy. And the second one is about there. The third one comes down about there. We have a fine big fella down about there. And below the horizon line, we have this poor little thing that looks a bit wrecked, doesn't he? But there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, when you've done this, there's nothing to stop you. There's a longwise job first. That's a kind of like a sausage, like flat. Okay, next one is round like that. The next one is facing us like that. And the last one's a fine big one. So put him down there. And then we got this poor little fella down the bottom here. And he's leaning down a bit this way. They're the 4 centers of the flowers. Do you understand that now? Now we come along and we put in the petals. And this fella is hanging down a bit. See that? He's facing up that way a little bit. Maybe I'll put that one a little bit bigger there. There we are. So he's facing up, up. This fella directly at you. Now these are like rabbit's ears, aren't they? And don't make them too perfect. They never are. Yeah. This is the hardest part. Practice this for a while before you do it. It's not hard at all. Just get used to doing this. Yeah. And then the big fella. Look, around it. You make 2 kind of half moons. Look, a half one and then one to match it. A half one, one to match it. A half one, one to match it. That's simple, isn't it? Now, this fellow looks a bit raggy down the end here. I think he's been attacked by the local beetles or something. I don't know what's happened to him, but you know the way they often, when they're down in the grass like that, the poor little fellas, they get knocked down by somebody walking by them, or I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter. Anyway, there it is. And there's a couple of, I'm just marking in where I'm going to put a little bit of yellow just down the bottom there. Now, last we need the stalks, because after all, these things have to grow out of something, don't they? And down there, that's it. Now, there's one extra stalk up there just to make it for good measure, so to speak. So look, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers and that fella there. Next, we have the masking fluid. Now, remember the few little things to tell you about it. First of all, it of course is used to cover the flowers, isn't it? Secondly, you dip your brush in the water first, then you dry it, and then into the masking fluid. Do you know why you do that? So you won't damage your brush. And as well as that, you count up to 20. Now, I'm starting at the top, and what I'm doing is I'm painting in the petals and the centers of all these flowers. Why do I start at the top and work down? Let me tell you why. If you didn't, what would happen is 20, dip it in the water, back to the masking fluid, you won't damage your brush. If you didn't do this, you'd stick your elbow in it, wouldn't you? Look, center of the flower, take your time with this. Once you remember that, if you remember that as you're counting 20, subconsciously, under your breath, you can do it out loud if you like, that you always wash out your brush before you proceed on. Next one. So each flower is a good way of looking at it. If you take a little longer to paint each flower, well then clean your brush halfway as well. There's another thing about this masking fluid. This masking fluid has a yellow tint to it. Now, some masking fluids are clear, white. And when you put them on white paper, you can't see them. So be sure when you're buying your masking fluid that it looks yellow. Do you understand that? And in fact, I tell you how you'll know. If you turn the bottle upside down, I can't do this now because the bottle's open, but if you turn the bottle upside down, you'll see the yellow underneath. There you are. Go into the local art store and turn all the bottles upside down until you find a yellow one. That's the one you want. It's easier to see it. That's the only reason. I used the other stuff once, and I did all these flowers and things, and then I couldn't find it. I had to run around with my finger, rushing around the page, trying to find out where on earth the masking fluid was. See that? Each time, into the water. Now, this is obviously the hardest part of this painting, because once I get this done, I'm going to just bang in. This little fella down the bottom here. Remember the poor little ragged fella? Now, I've got a few little dabs of paint there, and one more place. Why don't I should have done this first, but here I am talking about using the top and the bottom. The first thing I do is I break my own rules. I'm going to put a few little dabs up here. Just a little ear of corn or something sticking up. Now I'm looking over at the picture here, and I'm seeing where on earth these things are. There isn't one there at all, but I've changed my mind. Now, I'm going to put the stalks in next. Look, just pull them down like that. Yeah, near enough. As they say, you don't have to be too perfect with these. Down, just draw lines. Into the water, swish it around, brush clean. And that was a good brush. That's a sable brush I used. Normally, you don't do that. No, 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 no. Now, back with the lid on this thing. Back, cover the masking fluid, screw it on, put it down, you're finished with it. Now, you'll notice that the water has turned a kind of a cloudy colour. Doesn't matter. You can paint away with it. It's not going to do any harm. You don't need to change the water. Right, it's drying time. Out with the Master Blaster. Now, I really am giving this a big, big, long dry. And you know why? Because if this is not dry, and I start to paint over that, the brush will stick to the masking fluid, and you'll have the most awful mess. Oh, I've done it so many times. So make absolutely sure that it's dry. One other thing about masking fluid is that don't leave it overnight if you can avoid it, because you're going to finish the picture anyway. So be careful. Start the picture, finish the picture. Don't put masking fluid on and then a fortnight later come back and have a go at it, because it'll sink into the paper and it can be difficult. Well, I'm putting out some blue, cobalt blue, and some alizarin crimson. And they're my background colours. Because now that I've put the masking fluid on, of course, I'm away in a hack, haven't I, as they say. I can just paint over all this and ignore it. So, into the water, into the cobalt blue, swish it around. Look at that now. Now let's have a quick look at the painting once more, and we see that the background is fairly blue, isn't it? Yeah. Now once again, starting from the top, work down the page. Why? Because of course it'll run down the page, won't it? Look at that, and we're going over the, covering all our little daisies and our flowers and everything else. Mount Nugent Garden was really beautiful. If you ever get a chance to get there, honestly, bring your sketch pad, bring your camera, because you'll enjoy it. And you can wander about, and they've got another area, they've got two areas in them. One of them is the gardens, and the other one is what I call the natural area. And we did something there, but we didn't use it yet. We may be in the next series. A lovely lake. It was great, yes. Funny thing, one of the producers nearly fell into the lake. Slipped, yes. He was directing and doing one thing, and then he back and into this lake he went. But he was okay. Now there we are. That's got the blue. I'm not going to go the whole way. Well, just a little bit there. I want to leave a little bit of the plain down the bottom, because I'm going to put some of the nice purple in now. Make a purple colour. How would you make purple? Now, I hope you've been watching this series, and if you have, you've been watching the programs, you should know that blue and red make purple. For those of you who are just beginning, this is one of the little exercises you should do. You should practice mixing your colours. It's a great little exercise. It doesn't take long. And it's not wasteful, because you can paint pictures while you're doing it. Now look, and I'm just going to, while it's still wet now, I haven't dried this at all. All I dried was the masking fluid. I'm not going to actually dry this picture, because what I want to do is I want to get it to sink in, you know, to one layer on the other. All these colours I'm using are complementary to one another. They won't create mud. Mud is a wonderful colour. Mud is when you mix 3 or 4 colours together that don't complement one another, so they just turn into mud. I don't want to go too much now, because our next move is we'll be putting out some more colour. Look at that now. A nice winey colour taken on, isn't it? Do you like that? Now try and cover the flowers. Do you know why? Because remember that word counterchange? Do you remember that? I'm sure you do. That means that you put your lightest and darkest together, because then it shows up nicely. Now, I need some yellow out now. So if you have white flowers, naturally you need them against a dark background, otherwise you won't see them. It's like that masking fluid, isn't it? Same thing. Yeah. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of the yellow and a little bit of the alizarin crimson together, and I'm going to get a little kind of pinky colour. And then that'll go, look, into the centre. See the way it all sinks in? It's lovely. Now, it'll never look exactly the same. I mean, we're not trying to paint, I keep saying this, a photograph. It's not a photo, it's your interpretation of what you see. That's what it is. So you get your bunch of flowers, or you have your little sketch, whatever way you're going to do it. There was a famous painter called Manet, and Manet painted some lovely little simple flowers, very late in life indeed. And if you go to your local library and get the book out, I think it's called Manet's Favourite Flowers. I'm not, I can advertise him, he's a nice man. But he did a lovely job, and it's great practice. Get these flowers out and have a go with them. So there we are, look, we've got some kind of pinky stuff and everything behind it. Isn't that nice? Maybe a little more of the yellow now to represent a bit of kind of more foliage. And let me show you something else. Let me put out some raw sienna now next. How about that? So now I've got an extra colour out. I got 4 out now. I haven't put the brown out yet, the burnt umber, but we'll get to him eventually. I want to create a little, you'll see now, a little kind of background. You know, when if you imagine you're in the forest, you're looking through lying in the grass, looking through the foliage, you'd see in the distance all these kind of little things. These are little wisps of grass and little, oh, they're all kinds of. Now we'll mix some of that raw sienna with some of the red, and we should get a slightly darker colour. Do you remember I told you paint light to dark, light to dark? That's always the way that you do watercolours. So in other words, you can always make a thing darker, but it's awfully hard to make it light. You know? Going well? Now I'm going to just put in just 1 or 2 final dark little bits, and then we're going to dry all that. Be a real big drying job again. We'll get at it though, don't you worry. Let's tell you about my friend Stephen the builder. You know about him? I don't think I told you about him, did I? Stephen is our local builder, very nice fella. And he came along, and when I was renovating this studio of mine, we stripped the walls back down to the old stable. It's an old stable. But Stephen decided that he'd like to do something with the walls. The stripped down wall didn't look quite right. So he made up this kind of cement block effort, and he put it all over it. And I thought it was a bit harsh, but he's going to fix it for me, he promised. But he's a very good builder, yeah. I must pay him one of these days, you know. I feel that when he fixes it, then we'll give it to him. No, I think that's about it. Let's dry it. So ready, steady, go. The Master Blaster. Okay, I think we're nearly dry enough now. Now we've given that a good dry, so to make sure, because I tell you why, we need to rub out the flowers now to show up the white part. And of course, if we didn't have it dry, we'd rub out the paper as well, and we'd rub everything out. Now, when you're rubbing this out, always rub towards the centre, unless, of course, there's a stalk like that, there's no centre, then you just rub downwards. But this is just in case the paper would tear on you. If you rub towards the centre, see that? Now that, okay, let's put that brush away. Was I blocking the view there? Could you see me? Oh, I says. See that now? All has been revealed. Is that the word we're looking for? All we shall be revealed. This was a cheap rubber I bought somewhere. It's quite hard. It's very handy though. It'll rub out this. Look, there we are. I think that'll do. And all this. See now, we now have, hopefully, we have a whole lot of daisies loose daisies. So the next thing is, we're now going to do the centres of them. And for that, we're going to use some of the raw sienna and a little bit of the red. We make up a kind of a red. You know the centre of daisies, it's kind of a, isn't it? Now, starting from the top again, because we know where we're at. Look, ready, steady, go. And we leave out a little bit for the light. One there. Now, I'll do about 2 or 3 before I put the outlines in. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. So, do the centres, look, leave a little bit of, it's like the white of your eye. You know the little dot that they leave in the white of your eye? When portrait artists paint the centre of your eye, they always leave a little white dot to show as if the light is reflecting. And it always looks very well. Now, I think I should go to put out some burnt umber here because I don't have any, that's why. This is just for the edge of the daisy. Look, it's just a little. And underneath, see that there, on the side that the light is away from. This is the side. Light's coming this way, so on that side of the daisy there. Now, you don't have to do daisies all the time, of course. I'm just doing them because they're simple to do. They're a good practice to start. What am I doing with that? I've none left. Got to do more of the other one now. So it's a good practice. Now, you could make them buttercups. Anything you like. Any flower you like. As I mentioned before, it's a good idea to go down to the local florist and buy a bunch of flowers. They're easier to paint, actually, from the real thing, believe it or not. Because you see them. And, you know, they're not just 1 or 2 dimensional. You get the whole 3-dimensional and you can arrange them whatever way you like. So usually when my wife Peggy sees me come with a bunch of flowers, in the early days when we were married, she used to think I was being nice, was bringing her home flowers. Now she says, oh, he's going to paint flowers. I know, I bring her home flowers now and again, all right. But I might paint them first, of course. Now, take your time with flowers. Flowers are, once you get the background in, I would take a little longer at the background normally than I did in this occasion. But, as I say, we're always pressed for time on this program. We seem to always be. We're always rushing, aren't we? We're always rushing. But you could just put in a couple of the flowers and then you can finish them off later. Do you follow me? Now, the next move is I'm going to put in some of the stalks. I've got to cover them. They can't be all like that. So look, you just run a brush down along them like that. Make up some green or some whatever colour you want to make for stalks. Stalk colour.